Hey guys! So today we are answering a subscriber question, and the question in question was, Frederick, what recommendations can you make to someone who is just starting to learn programming today based on the current industry? So let's get into it. Well, I can make quite a few recommendations, but let's try to scope it just to do the thing that I think that is among the most important things, both when we are estimating work for people that like stakeholders or when we're trying to help somebody out with their programming career. And this is going out to most of the more experienced programmers out there. I think that as anybody who's been doing this for more than a little while and you actually can give some solid advice on software development, we should always start by just asking this fundamental question to the person in question, which is, what is your goal with software development? Because the goal of the programmer is the thing that always makes the most amount of sense to ask about. Because if you don't know the goal, there's no way that you can make a good recommendation. And then we can get opinionated about frameworks and tools and stuff like that afterwards. But since I don't actually have a back and forth here, this is kind of one direction, I will just assume that this person has the same needs as most developers out there in the world. Their needs are simple. They want to be able to make web applications of some sort, and they want to know what they should bet on in order to get a job, because that's what most of us are actually after, right? So let's start by just saying first and foremost that the first thing I can tell you is that software development programming is it's a mid-length or long-term type of investment. It is not something that you are going to be able to do professionally within just a few months. You're looking at a personal investment of about 1 to 5 years before you are solid, if you will, before you are considered to be a junior or even a more experienced developer, depending on how fast you actually progress. So you should that's a heads up first and foremost. Be aware of that this is very much the same sort of dedication that you would put into getting into shape or things of this nature. So that's number one. Number two is that when you start out in software development, you will find that when you go out on the internet and look around for people who can give you some type of advice, most of the content that you will find is very superficial, it's very high level. Everybody's talking about trendy tools back and forth, and they talk about tons and tons and tons of stuff. You can, for the most part, or I'm not saying ignore it, but you shouldn't really pay all that much attention to the people who have the strongest opinion about what you should start with. Because the fact of the matter is that if you're starting from scratch today as a software developer, it doesn't matter all that much what you start with if you don't care about the end goal. But if you care about the end goal, and let's say for the sake of argument that your end goal is to have a stable, safe job or be very in high demand in the job market, then regardless of what people tell you, there's only 3 languages that really matter for most parts of the world, and that's going to be JavaScript, Java, and C#. And you can pretty much pick whichever one you want between Java and C#. It doesn't really matter all that much which one you pick, but on average Java is a little bit higher. And JavaScript is used by pretty much every single company on the planet that has a web presence. So these are the languages that I would highly recommend that you start out with if your goal is to go into the most stable forms of programming. If you want to, you can still go into something like PHP if you wanted to as well, if these languages aren't really for you, but these are going to be the best bets. And the thing is that even though I say this, I'm fully aware of, and most people are, that there are other languages out there, there's tons of job opportunities and so forth, and that's why I'm telling you, you don't have to pick these 3, you just have to be aware of that these are among the more popular ones for job purposes. There are others as well, but as a beginner, we kind of need to touch on this as well. You might get paralyzed by all of the people telling you all the things that you need to know, but you have to start somewhere. And that's one of the biggest things that you should take away from my little rant here. you have to start somewhere, guys. I don't know how many people I've talked to now who they say that they're going to go with one tool, and then they kind of go, well, but everybody's telling me I should use this as well, and I'm thinking maybe I should do this and then part that, and then you're getting paralyzed, guys. You haven't even learned how to build a simple application. So why would you start convoluting your own process or your own work before you even know what it means? My favorite one is that we have people who, they think that they understand microservices, and the first thing they do is to ask me, Fredrik, oh, what languages should I use for what service? And I kind of go, okay, you already missed the point. You've already missed the point. I mean, if you are a beginner level programmer, start by learning the basics first. And that's the thing that you should really, really do. That's the most important thing. Nobody's going to expect you on day one to have a really strong architectural understanding of microservices or any more advanced concepts when you start working. What's going to matter is that you have a really good understanding of the basics. In other words, object-oriented programming, the same monolithic applications, the same boring stuff that most people who have a bit of experience are so bored with that they invent more advanced forms of tooling and work processes sometimes because of good reasons and sometimes because they're just bored. So start with that, because that is where everybody starts. So once you have that foundation, then you can go into the more advanced stuff. And then finally, I will also tell you that when you go into software development, you should be aware of that there is a little bit of a bar to pass. The first job is going to be the toughest one for you to get. So it's very, very good for you to make sure that you have a good understanding of the basics. In other words, just algorithms and like the basic practices of programming, object-oriented programming, examples like that. And then you need to also go a little bit further, I would say, and make sure that you have a small, like a few side projects or some small portfolio where you show a genuine interest in what you're doing. Because when you first start out, even if you invest 1 to 5 years, odds are that depending on company, you may not actually have what they perceive to be enough to be like a very plausible or feasible candidate for them to hire. And that means that you kind of have to, in the beginning, you kind of have to prove that you're going to be a very quick return on investment for a company. So the first priority for you as a developer is to make as a junior developer, is to make a really good CV, show that you're taking a few extra courses, show a genuine interest in what you're doing, and make sure that you have the skills, like you have your core skills up to scratch. Because that's the thing that's going to determine whether or not a company is going to invest in you. And in the beginning, before you have your first job, that's what it will stand and fall. Your entire career in software development will stand and fall with your ability to break into the market. So that's the thing that you're going for in the beginning. So what I want you to take away from this is that first and foremost, you should know that software development is it's a serious investment that you're going to have to make. It's not something that is done in a few months. It's measured in years, usually 1 to 5 years. And apart from that, you should be aware of that the most popular languages for job purposes is JavaScript, Java, and C#. There are tons of other languages out there, PHP, Python, etc., etc. But these are the most stable ones for job purposes. And in the beginning, it doesn't really matter all that much which one you pick, because when you're learning programming, the most important thing is that you actually learn how to program correctly, as opposed to trying to pick the best language for every possible scenario, because the big secret is that there is no perfect language for every single scenario. And then make sure that you have make sure that you invest in your portfolio a little bit so that you have some extra projects on the side. Then make sure that you have a good CV and all of this good stuff, because the first job is going to be the trickiest for you, as basically what you're doing is that you're trying to prove to some company for your first hire that you are going to be a very quick return on investment. So make sure that that you are the sort of person that shows that you have a good set of core skills, that you're genuinely interested in what you do, and a pleasant person to work with. Have a great day.